can make life better. When we face unexpected challenges, so do our pets. That's why we're on a mission to support people and their pets. Whether donating a bag of kibble, sharing an Instagram post of a lost cat, or welcoming a foster pet into your home, every bit of kindness counts. Visit petsandpeopletogether.org to learn how to be a helper in your community. Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
91.3 FM WBNY is proud to present Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman.
Welcome to Democracy Now!
Award-winning investigative journalism.
Is the NRA imploding?
Providing relevant analysis that makes you think.
Secret State Department documents, including evidence of U.S. war crimes.
Fact-finding reports you will not hear elsewhere. Democracy Now! Airs Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. on 91.3 FM, WBNY, Buffalo.
All right, here we go with Living for the People. This is L. Nathan here. Welcome you to our broadcast, focused on providing insight into events shaping our national and regional world and the facts behind those events and policies that are shaping our world for today and for tomorrow. Join us weekly on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. following Amy Goodman's Democracy Now! Program. And of course, you know our program is live, so you can call and you can join our discussion. We really hope that you will. Our number here again is 716-878-5104. That's 716-878-5104. We don't have Norm McCarter here as our in-studio audience of one, so he must be out here collecting money again. But we do have his son, William Isaiah.
My son.
That's good. We have Willie H's son.
Yeah, raise your hand.
William Isaiah. There you go. Right. And he's also a studio producer. In fact, Willie tells me that he actually knows more about this stuff than he does. And of course, Willie is Willie H., who is our engineer who does the live streaming of our program. Welcome, Willie. Thanks.
Welcome, everybody, to Living for the People with L. Nathan here. You can call us at 716-878-5104. And my man Norm is in the house.
He's in the house. We called him up. Call forth what is not as though it is, and it shall be.
Good morning.
I got that directly out of the Bible. It's in Hebrews. I think it's chapter 11. I think I know what I'm talking about.
Good morning, Mr. Hare.
All right. Good morning, Norm. So I want to take today's program and talk about something that's, it seems to me something that we should be talking about because it reflects the moral compass of our country. And I'm convinced in my heart that if you do not follow a specific, rigorous moral, spine that binds you to a core of basic ethics and morality, that it becomes easy for you to get drawn to something different and find yourself on a road doing things that you really don't want to be known for doing. Let me see if I can make this make sense. The Ukrainians, they're in real trouble. They got this humongous country, Russia, invading them, bombing their cities, their capital, killing women and children, killing men, and so on. And of course, the Ukrainians are resisting, and they're resisting with all their might, and they're asking for all kind of help from people, in Western Europe and in the United States. All that we understand, and it's appropriate. But the Ukrainians now are in a position where, as the winter took place, you had the Russian troops that had sort of burrowed into places in eastern Ukraine. They then started mining the streets and the roads and so on, the areas around municipal buildings. They put mines in those places, and they buried themselves in the urban infrastructure where they're very difficult to dislodge. Where Ukrainians were making a lot of progress last year was when the fighting was taking place, in the forested areas where there was a lot of cover. And you couldn't amass a whole lot of people in one spot. You had people spread out, and they were able to use their sort of guerrilla tactics against those Russian troops. But when the winter ended, what they found is the Ukrainians were facing open land that didn't have a lot of tree cover and so on, making them more exposed for their troops. And they found that moving these Russian troops out of these urban areas in these villages and cities in eastern Ukraine was very difficult. And so they come up with the idea of, well, why don't we just use cluster bombs? Mm. Now, I don't know what most of us know about martial law, military law, and so on, but cluster bombs for about 123 countries in the world are illegal. Mm. And the reason why they're illegal is not because there is something inherently illegal about or evil about cluster bombs. It's that you can't control what the cluster bombs do. Cluster bombs are bombs that are encased in larger bombs, that it may be a 15, 20 foot long, rocket. Mm-hmm. And when that thing explodes, the outer part of it explodes, and it sends the inner bombs, it sends them out in all kinds of directions. So you may have one bomb that might have 100 bomb projectiles in that one bomb. So when it explodes and it sends those projectiles everywhere, you can't control where they go. You may hit as many civilian people as you hit, Russians. You don't know where these things are going to go. So because they are essentially low-level versions of weapons of mass destruction, you've had conventions that began, I believe the first one was in 2008, where people came together, and I think they came to an agreement, a cluster munitions agreement in 2010, not to deploy cluster bombs in war settings because they create such chaotic, widespread damage. And a lot of the bombs don't actually, the little bombs that are carried inside the bigger bombs, the little bombs don't always detonate. They just fall someplace and sit there. Mm. Then a dog comes along and starts licking it, and boom, the dog gets blown up.
He's out.
It's usually not the dogs, though. It's the kids.
Oh, wow.
It's people like Nate Hare. Mm. Well, Nate Hare's that kid you saw, over on Hamburg and South Avenue, swimming across the Buffalo River, climbing up the side of a granary and whatnot, right? A silo, and diving at rats swimming in the water. So, you get kids like me that are just like crazy kids and whatnot, very adventurous and so on, right? Those are the kids that'll be picking up those cluster bombs. Mm-hmm. And Lord knows what'll happen to those kids when they do. Go ahead, Nora.
Mr. Hare, when you are at war, first and foremost, it don't seem, number one, like the Russians really care about collateral damage or people dying. There's been all kinds. And the question I have is, I guess, would they have war crimes or something against them afterwards? Because
they're not even talking about the Russians using the cluster bombs, although I know that the Russians are doing it. The Ukrainians are using the cluster bombs.
I guess they're doing it in retaliation for all of the,
They're trying to win.
Yeah.
We used to say it all the time. If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying to win, right? So, Ukrainians are trying to win. I get it. It's not that I'm objecting to the Ukrainians fighting the Russians. That's not my issue. My issue is that cluster bombs cause so much damage to the civilian world outside of the war, the people that are not fighting the war. Mm-hmm. They are the ones who end up paying the price. Yeah. You walk down a street and a mine, you step on a mine, boom, you blow up. You pick up one of these things, it looks real odd. What is this? You pick it up, and when you pick it up, you did just enough to set it off, boom, it blows your kid up, and so on. It is such an indiscriminate kind of weapon that it seems to me that we should have an aversion to using a weapon like that. So I get why Ukraine is doing this. I'm just asking us to look at the subject and ask ourselves, it's not the Ukrainians selling cluster bombs to Ukrainians. It's the United States selling cluster bombs to the Ukrainians.
Okay, I got
And
your point.
as we have talked about many times,
Yeah.
right? And I know that people don't like to hear it this way, but the United States is one of the, if not the largest, it's one of the top 3 largest gun manufacturers or weapons manufacturers and sales operations in the world. Right? I mean, we have a military-industrial complex that, if we don't have wars going on, we'd have, bombs blocking our way to get up to the 190 because we have so many of these things stored up in stockpiles. They have to get used, so they need to have war to be able to use that stuff so they could get paid to replace it, and so on. I mean, think about how much money is being made by Dow Jones, Dow Chemical, Rockwell Industries, and so on. Think about how much money these munitions manufacturers are making right now, when all of that munitions that were purchased, ammunition, rifles, mortar launchers, jeeps, and so on, all those things that have been used and torn up and replaced in Ukraine, we're the ones. It's our country that's making that stuff, but it's the American manufacturers of that stuff who are getting paid. You're not getting, well, wait, Willie, does Norm get paid as a veteran? Does he get a piece of the war?
He I think right now,
Yeah, he gets some tickets or something. He can cash them in at
we're
the
not gonna
U.S.
say nothing.
Defense Department, right?
No, hey, Mr. Harry, I'll chime in. No, sir.
Okay, that's not you. They didn't give you that deal.
No, sir.
Okay.
No, sir.
All right. So my point is that who's benefiting from this? The people who work in the military-industrial complex field. They're the ones who are benefiting from this. Regardless of how you feel about the right and wrong of the war, somebody's getting paid to replace all of this stuff that's been sent over to Ukraine to fight the war.
Well,
and that stuff is expensive.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Well, like I say, we are an industrialist country, capitalistic, and they're gonna make their money, Mr. Hare. I think that when it really boils down to it, first and foremost, the war in itself, anytime you have war, it's going to be a lot of extra stuff that goes on. And that right there, the collateral damage of that, by us selling the munitions and doing this and that, I mean, if we had integrity, we wouldn't do it, but it's about the money and it's about the self-interest.
Always been about the money.
And that's always the case. I'm just trying to get us to recognize when you don't govern yourself by principle, govern yourself by a body of ethics that bind you. You say, this is who you are, and you're always going to be this, right? If you don't do that, it becomes easy for you to get peeled away from what's right and start doing what's expedient, even if it's wrong. It becomes easier for you to do that. Go ahead.
I'm just wondering, when I ask you this, do you think that when they go to war, the people that are buying the arms, they ask for what they want, and they're looking for that particular type of an item?
No question.
Okay,
Ukrainians are asking for it right now.
They're asking.
They want the cluster bombs.
They want cluster bombs.
Right.
So we're like I say, we're capitalistic.
So let me give you an example of what I mean. When these ancestors of the Americans arrived from Europe onto the shores of North America, they were trying to get away from oppression in Europe.
Yes, sir.
Mostly religious oppression. If you weren't Catholic, you'd become an Anglican, or you become a protester, a Protestant or a Calvinist or a Methodist or whatever you would become, then you were in a difficult space with the dominant religion in Europe, which was the Roman Catholic Church. And so people that were trying to get away from that, they found a place to go. we could go to North America. And they went. They went to Newfoundland, and they went to Maine, and they went to Virginia, and so on, and they set up camp. Their goal wasn't to destroy things. Their goal wasn't to enslave people, et cetera, et cetera. Their goal was to free themselves from oppression in Europe and set up a living arrangement in North America where they could be free to practice whatever religion they believed in, or to practice whatever kind of government structure that they believed in. But in order to tame the country, United States is a big country, right? North America is a big territory. In order to tame this big territory, you needed a lot of manpower. Well, the Native Americans weren't willing to be your manpower. They're willing to be their own manpower to tame what they needed to tame for them. They weren't here to tame it for you.
Right.
Right? So where do these ancestors of the current Americans, where did they get those man hours from? The labor hours from? They got it through snatching people off the continent of Africa and enslaving them. Now, they tried to do that by enslaving the Native Americans, but remember, the Native Americans lived here. So they could run away, and they knew where to go.
Right.
When you ran away, where did you go? Everywhere you went was just as bad as the place you were in.
Right.
There was no place for you to go. But for the Native Americans, there was. So they were not able to use the Native Americans successfully as a slave population. But they were able to use us, because once we got transported 3,000 miles from Africa across the Atlantic Ocean, we were isolated with no way to get back home. So they had us in a trap situation. The point I'm making is that this country, to this day, slavery ended in this country in December of 1865. 1865, 150, almost 160 years ago, slavery ended in this country. And this country is still warped by slavery to this day.
Well, Mr. Hare, I went in the bookstore and there was a display of, hundreds of books on racism, Black history, and matter of fact, it was young white male wrote a book on segregation, racism, and housing, showing how through from 1920 on up, how racism was used, white segregate housing. Matter of fact, I want to have them on the show. Hey, and they having an event that's happening. No, did you remember the date of that event? We'll get it. I
don't remember the date, but I live right across the street.
Right.
And in fact, I bought the book he's talking about.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, I'll bring it in, Mr. I'll let you check it out. But I was so impressed by this group of people. Went in there and they helped me, and they were really, really for the support
Black history
of all kinds of almost everything Black.
Right.
And I connected with it pretty good.
So but the paradigm I'm trying to get us to look at is, as stupendous a country the United States has turned itself into.
Yes, sir.
Right? Got big buildings, got airplanes, got water treatment facilities, they got power, they got guns, they got cars. People got jobs. We just had almost 500,000 jobs were created in June, right? This is a big, dynamic, tremendous country and whatnot. But the country is still warped to this day by the venile, most vile kind of sin you could commit, which was to steal human beings, steal their children, steal their wives, steal their husbands, steal their lives, steal their land, steal their language, steal everything from them, and just abuse them for hundreds of years.
Years later,
right? In order for you to develop this country, so that despite the development that we've become as a country, we still haven't gotten the stain of that wrong thing off of us.
Still, some of it's still being practiced. That's the crazy.
Right.
Well, with that being said, Mr. Hare, and just as you've taught us, you said that slavery ended in 18. Slavery continues to go on, and it's really never ceased. And just like you were telling us about how, I believe you spoke of if someone thought or felt that you should still be a slave. It was real crazy to me.
Well, essentially, what they did is they changed the definition of words. They said back in 1520 or so AD, if you were black, by definition, you were a slave. You were either an owned slave, meaning that somebody had papers on you. You had a deed on you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I own Norman Carter. I've owned him since, you know, February 1st, 1971 or whatever, right?
Yeah.
I own him, right? Or you are an unowned slave, which means, well, nobody bought him yet. You know, he hasn't been captured yet,
Right.
but he's a slave for sure. We know, because look at his skin.
Oh,
He's got slave skin.
And that type of attitude or thought is we see it in the penitentiary. You know, where
Exactly.
same thing. Where if he's black, somehow he's going to end up. We're going to get him maybe into penitentiary.
The Constitution of this country, the 13th Amendment, states that slavery is abolished in the United States except as a punishment for being duly convicted of a crime, which means slavery was not abolished.
yes, sir.
Slavery was connected to the punishment that you incur if you get convicted of a crime. So because the United States decided, for whatever their reason, to make slavery connected to criminal justice, you still have the same slave criminal justice context to policing today.
Yep.
The police are the same kind of patrols that the people in South Carolina and North Carolina and Virginia and Maryland and so on, that they hired to go out into the woods to find African people. What are you doing over there? Are you praying?
Right.
I see three of y'all together. I don't see the Christ. Come on, you're going with me. Get in the paddy wagon. They called the people patrolmen, and they called the wagons they were putting people in to capture them, they called them paddy wagons. The exact same language, the exact same structure, the exact same system of racial oppression that they engaged in 1810, 1850, and so on, is what goes on today.
And it's always in their thought process. Every time I'm encountered by a police officer that I've been encountered, is what you doing? Stay out of trouble.
Right.
Because they look at me as he's black, big, he's got the potential for, even though they're joking, it's in their thought pattern.
And because the paradigm is that this is what was established, by these slave era laws that became the Jim Crow and then the black codes and so on. But those slave era laws, the context of it was that all white people, this is written in law in South Carolina, in Virginia and so on, that all white people were deputized to police or to monitor or supervise or oversee all black people, regardless of whether you were an enslaved person or not. They had the right to inspect you. Who are you? Well, you got papers? Where you been? How do I know you're not owned by somebody just because you don't have any papers on you? You show me some papers that show me that you own yourself. Do you have a deed that says that you own your own self as property? I mean, it's that kind of context that was created in this country, and we still live with the sin of all of that on us to this day, because once you got away from what your initial goal was, which was a good goal, your goal was to free yourself from religious oppression in Europe, being oppressed by, people making you a serf, under some king, in some feudal, economy in Europe. You were trying to free yourself from all of that. I get that. That's a good thing. You came to the United States because there was no resistance to you being a Calvinist or a Protestant or a Catholic or whatever it is that you wanted to be. There was no resistance for you doing that when you established these little colonies in North America. But in order to develop the country into a modern state, you needed massive manpower. And so you did something that was vile. You did something that was vicious. You did something that was so insidious that it put a stain on you and you have not been able to wipe that stain off of you. In fact, you re-wipe the stain on yourself because you keep justifying in your own mind why it was okay for you to do the horrible things that you did to create this paradigm in this country in the first place. So I just want us to get this this thought into our heads that the United States is considering right now sending, and when I say sending their cluster bombs to Ukraine, I don't mean the United States was going to go and buy cluster bombs from someplace else and send them to Ukraine. I'm talking about the United States has so many cluster bombs in its inventory. They just got places where they got stores of thousands and thousands and thousands of these bombs. They're just going to unload these bombs on Ukraine and then let Ukraine fire these things, at these Russians. The thing you need to also understand is when those bombs explode, let's say in a small city in Russia where they're dug in because people are dug into basements and, trenches that they built, in these small communities around the eastern Ukraine. The cluster bombs are likely not to kill that many Russian people.
Wow.
Right? I mean, they'll intimidate people. Mm-hmm. They'll make people go underground, but they might not kill that many people because the Russians are inside walls. You know what I mean? They're inside of buildings. They're right. In basements of buildings and so on. So a cluster bomb is not going to get to them there. So it may give you some space to be able to move militarily more easily against the Russians, mm-hmm. but the consequences are going to be extreme. You're going to end up with thousands of these bombs laid out, indiscriminately around places in eastern Ukraine. And when this war is over, those bombs are still going to be there on the ground.
Right. And
somebody's dog, somebody's kid,
yeah.
somebody's family is going to get, wiped out,
right.
Because of this, right? I just want us to understand that that's what really is at play. I know we want to always think of ourselves as the noble people. We're the Americans. We're the exceptional people. We're noble. We're moral. We have Judeo-Christian standards. Et cetera. Right? And that's what we say.
We have great ideals. That's what we have.
Well, we say we have great ideals. I don't want to say you have them because if you have them, you would act like it.
Right.
We're not acting like it, so we must not have them.
Right.
But we do talk about them.
Right.
We've got to get from the talking about it to the doing about it.
Okay, real quick, Mr. Hare. First and foremost, we could never be charged with a war crime or anybody come at us with that unless we're at war in itself. Is that correct?
No, you can be charged with a war crime because you did a war crime. You don't have to be at war with somebody. For example, let's suppose that the Americans decided that the resistance against the murder of George Floyd, that we're not going to tolerate having all of these demonstrations and whatnot. We're going to come at these people with tear gas, and then we're going to start dropping cluster bombs on these people, to break up these demonstrations.
Right.
Now you're not at war with anybody. You're just engaging in misconduct in your own country, right? So war crimes can be committed, by everybody everywhere.
Okay. Well, I'm talking about as far as us knowing what this situation is and that we're killing innocent people due to the it's just like intermittently a drug dealer selling drugs and somebody passing away due to that. Now
right.
that you know what I mean?
The drug dealer doesn't want his customer to die, but because he's selling these people drugs, customers die, people in the customer's environment die, people wind up losing their houses, losing their families and so on. Yeah, I agree. I hear you.
So I'm just saying, now we are selling these cluster bombs and we are the manufacturers and the ones that are in charge of that. It would seem almost in a way that because we know what we're doing, we could be charged for that in some manner.
People could bring us before the Hague and say that you aided and abetted, these crimes. So I agree with you on that. I guess what I'm trying to suggest to us is if you govern yourself by principle, and even if it's harder for you to do what you're trying to get done because you're governing yourself by principle and the people that you're arrayed against are unprincipled, so they get away with doing horrible things that you choose not to do because you don't want to be a part of doing those horrible things. So you feel that you have a lower chance of succeeding in resisting those people. My belief is this is just a faith thing, right? And we all got our own understanding of faith.
Yes, sir.
But my faith instinct says to me that if I govern myself by principle, even if it looks like I'm in a weaker position because there are tough things that I could do that I choose not to do, because I think that they're horrible things that I'd wind up doing to the people as a whole. If I govern myself by principle, sooner or later, something will happen that will turn the tide for me, and I'll end up on the right side of victory because I govern myself by principle. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir, it does. It does.
And I just think that this country has to become committed to principle. It says that it believes in principles, right? They run their mouths about this all the time.
Yeah.
But every time a challenge comes up and a way to beat the challenge is to do something unprincipled, we do the unprincipled thing immediately.
Self-interest in padding pockets. It seems like it supersedes principle.
All the time.
You know.
All of the time.
Yeah.
And I'm not blaming this on this color person or that color person. I'm saying to you that if you do not govern yourself by principle, you will become unprincipled. The very first challenge that hits you, you will become unprincipled. And if you become unprincipled, sooner or later, you'll become unrecognizable to be yourself. That's not even me anymore.
Yeah,
that's
right.
somebody else. Yeah. That's the position that we're putting ourselves in. So we'll talk a little bit more about this. We want to take a quick break and talk to our sponsors. Please stick with us. We will see you on the other side of the break here at Living for the People at 91.3 FM WBNY.
You took the first step and quit smoking, but even former smokers may still be at risk for lung cancer. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know about a new low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early. It takes only 60 seconds and could save your life. You took the first step, now take the next. Visit SaveByTheScan.org for a simple quiz to see if you're eligible and talk to your doctor about screening. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
We got Talia coming up this morning, 10 a.m. on 91.3 FM WBNY. 10 a.m. Talia Talks, interviewing some of the most competent people in our community.
Make history every day. Okay.
91.3 FM WBNY is proud to present Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman.
Welcome to Democracy Now!
Award-winning investigative journalism.
Is the NRA imploding?
Providing relevant analysis that makes you think.
Secret State Department documents, including evidence of U.S. war crimes.
Fact-finding reports you will not hear elsewhere. Democracy Now! Airs Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. on 91.3 FM, WBNY, Buffalo.
All right, welcome back to Living for the People. This is L. Nathan here, your host. We're here with Norm MacArthur, who is our in-studio audience of one. Welcome back, Norm.
Thank you, Mr. Hare.
And we're here with Willie H., who is our engineer, our IT director. He's the one who makes it possible for us to live stream these programs. Can I see? Yeah, there he is. Welcome back, Willie.
Welcome, everybody, to Living for the People with L. Nathan here. Make sure you call in 716-878-5104. That's 716-878-5104.
Absolutely. And stick around at 10 o'clock. We're going to have Talia, is it Rodriguez?
Yeah, Talia.
Talia Rodriguez. She has a program, Yo Hablo de Negocios, which I believe means let's talk business.
All right.
I'm hoping I'm saying that right, Talia, so make sure you correct me. Don't have me out here acting like I'm saying something and I'm saying something else, right? So I just let me finish up a little bit on this cluster bomb thing, and then I'll get into the rest of our subject. Concern over the risk to civilian harm led in 2008 to a convention on cluster munitions. By 2010, 120 countries had signed off on this convention, and I think by 2023, by this year, 123 states had signed on to this convention, legally binding all of them, those signatories, to not use cluster munitions for any reason at all, just to not use them, period. Guess who the three countries are that are not signatories to the convention on not using
US?
Cluster bombs?
U.S.
Well, of course, Russia, who they only believe in mayhem in Russia, I guess, right?
China.
Nope, China signed on.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, they said to tell Norm stop talking bad about us. You know, we're not as bad as Norm thinks we are.
How about North Korea?
North Korea didn't sign off on it. Ukraine didn't sign off on it.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Right?
Right.
And of course, the United States.
Then, right.
Why would we bind ourselves to something moral when there's immorality out here? Why would you bind yourself to something moral, right? There's no legal reason why Ukraine or Russia cannot deploy cluster bombs. In fact, both have done so since February of 2022. Nor is there any legal reason why the Biden administration can't sell cluster munitions to Ukraine. But there are laws that set out how cluster bombs can be used. The relevant part of international humanitarian law is the 1977 Additional Protocol 1 to the Geneva Conventions, which both Ukraine and Russia have ratified and the United States has ratified. The additional protocol set out rules for warring parties that they must observe to limit the harm to civilians, acknowledging that civilian deaths are an inevitable part of war. Article 51 of Additional Protocol Number 1 prohibits indiscriminate attacks on civilians. Such attacks include employing a weapon that cannot be directed at a specific target. You cannot direct a cluster bomb at a specific target. So even though the United States is not a signatory to the Cluster Bombs Convention, we are signatory to the Geneva Convention. The Geneva Convention says you cannot use a weapon that cannot be directed at a specific military target. But the United States is doing that. I mean, the cluster bomb, by definition, cannot be directed at a specific military target. Article 57 of the Geneva Accord stresses that attacking armies have a duty of care to spare civilian populations. These are principles. If you do not govern yourself by principles, you become governed as an unprincipled entity. You become an unprincipled entity, like Russia.
Let me just ask this question, Mr. Hare. In the history of war, has there ever been a war where there hasn't been, I mean, I'm talking about a whole bunch of civilian losses. You know what I mean? When you go to war,
you put everything on the line. You're all in, and you do whatever you got to do to win. I get that. I'm not. I understand.
I'm just, when you at war, you're at war. I'm totally against, right with it, because I'm a civilian. You know what I'm saying? If we're at war,
I'm just saying that at the moment that we're in right now.
Yeah.
Okay. All the rest of the stuff, all that being true, everything that we said being true. The moment that we're in right now is the cluster bombs have not been sold to Ukraine yet.
Oh, okay.
The United States has been asked by Ukraine, give me all the cluster bombs you got. And the chemical weapons that you destroyed, this morning, don't destroy them.
Yeah.
Send those over here too. We want to use those on the Russians too. Right?
Give it to us so we can do a little damage. We want to do some damage.
Exactly.
Now,
right?
let me ask you this.
I just want to make sure this point is we're at a stage right now where if people advocate correctly, you could possibly get Biden not to send these cluster bombs,
okay,
right, and endanger all of these citizens.
Right. Probably a lot of innocent people.
Is this in our best self-interest? Now, just like we speak of You know, if we don't help Ukraine with sending Russia back, Russia advances, and then they continue to advance, ultimately, as we speak of all the time, we don't know where that advance is going to stop. They could be at our doorstep.
You are right. We have to help Ukraine. We can't let Russia just start gobbling up neighboring countries and whatnot, willy-nilly. We can't allow that to occur. But the process that we use to stop Russia from doing that,
Right.
in my view, has to be governed by principle.
Right.
Right? We should not drop chemical weapons on Russia. We should not drop nuclear tainted bullets and whatnot on Russia.
Because the innocent people is the one that dies, not the ones that we want to.
You just have to believe in your heart that if you live by principle as opposed to living by expediency, that somehow things will work to your favor. They will come back your way.
Mr. Hare, I love the way that I responded. But I cannot see, and war is not fought by principle.
Willie, Norm is like General Milley, the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
No, I understand where Norm is coming from.
I get your principles. I like it. Write that down. Write that down for me, Nate.
One of the things I know about Norm is bottom line. Like, if it's going to make money, let's do it. If it's going to get rid of Russia, let's do it. I don't care about the other stuff. Let's get the result.
Let me win first.
That's the kind of guy Norman, which I like. I actually like that.
Let me win first, and after I won, you can come back and talk to me about my principles.
You're summing me up in a nutshell there.
I understand.
Let's get results.
I'm just trying to give you my thought about it. Here's something that came out. This was, again, through these studies that are done by these international commissions. They did a study in 2021, and they found that 97% of cluster bomb casualties, the people that were injured or killed by cluster bombs in 2021, 97% of them were civilians.
Wow, yeah.
Wow.
Were civilians.
Yeah. That's huge.
Okay? So if you're doing something when almost everybody who gets killed is not even the people that are at war, it's the civilians in the population, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be doing something like that, right?
That's terrible.
This is just me, right? So the Cluster Bombs Monitor, which logs international use of bombs, found that as of August of 2022, the only people on Earth, the entire planet, we were real hot yesterday, 100 degrees in Houston and so on. Of all of the places on Earth, the only place where they were using cluster bombs was the Ukraine. It seems to me that if everybody else in the world can get along, can fight their battles, spit at each other, whatever it is they do, without using cluster bombs, seems to me that the Ukrainians should be able to work this out too. We shouldn't have to be doing things where 97% of the people that get killed.
See, now that's where Zelensky come in. Zelensky is that type of guy too. He's using any means that he got to get his result.
And I understand he's got a nice smile,
Right, that's what I mean.
He's a comedian. I get it. I'm not saying that he's not, a great personality. He may be all of that. And I understand what he's up against. Russia's a big country.
Yeah,
he's a small country.
Right, he's a big guy. So he got to use whatever tactics
they do whatever they feel they got to do.
Right.
I'm just saying that at the end of the day, you're going to regret not staying within principle. When you get outside of principle and you become unprincipled, the effects of what you do live a lot longer than the day in which you did it.
The other aspect to this whole thing is, well, I can't even say that. We're already using these particular weapons and different things. Russia has already been unprincipled. Oh, that's why I say I can't say that. So if the Ukraine uses these weapons, it'll cause the Russians to utilize more unconventional things that maybe they shouldn't use.
Right. I mean, if you use cluster bombs, why wouldn't the Russians say, well, gosh, you killed a lot of my people using these cluster bombs. I got nuclear tipped machine gun bullets.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
How about I start putting those things over there and putting radiation all over the place?
Right.
How'd you all feel about that?
Yeah.
Now, you know the Russians are not above doing that. They put bombs on top of the largest nuclear reactor in the continental Western Asia and Europe. The largest nuclear reactor, a power facility in that part of the world is located in the Donetsk region of Ukraine. They put bombs on top of two of the towers of the nuclear reactor facility. What do you think would happen if those bombs went off and those reactors went critical? You know, water went out, so they didn't have anything to control the temperature of the reactor, and so it just started to heat up and heat up and heat up until it's melted right down in through the crust of the earth and whatnot. Right? What do you think would happen if that occurred? You would have huge sections of Western Russia and Eastern Ukraine that you couldn't live in anymore.
Oh, so that would do damage to Russia too.
Right. But the Russians don't care. Their thing is, if what I'm going to do is, if I know for certain it's going to hurt you,
right.
It might hurt me, but I know for certain it's going to hurt you.
Right.
I'm willing to take that bet.
Wow.
The Russians are willing to play that way. And what they're saying to you is, are you willing to take that bet? Now, the United States tries to act like they're, the principal people and whatnot. But we know the United States. We've known the United States we've lived with the United States for a long period of time. The United States will play whatever card they got to play to win. And they'll talk about it later. they'll do whatever they got to do to win. I'm saying that when you're still in a position to do something that is right rather than do something that is wrong, you should do what's right.
Mm-hmm.
You should not do what's wrong, especially when you're in a position to do right. Mm-hmm. You should try to do right every opportunity you get. Yeah. That's my way of thinking about it.
Yes, sir.
So let me get to a couple of other thoughts and whatnot. We got this, I know y'all call them MAGA, the Make America Great people. I think it's a make your attorneys go to jail. I probably don't have the right initials, but I think that's what's going on here, right? Arizona's former governor, Doug Ducey, I don't understand this. Donald Trump actually went to Doug Ducey and asked him to overturn the election results in Arizona and say that Donald Trump won the election in Arizona, not Joe Biden. The report showed that Trump pressured Ducey to deny Joe Biden's electoral win. They have videos showing the former governor was signing the certificate certifying the election in Arizona at the same time that Trump was making the call. When Trump makes the call, it goes to Ducey's cell phone. Ducey looks at the cell phone, sees who's making the call, sets the cell phone down, and goes back to signing.
Whoa. Wow.
Oh yeah, this.
I guess he already knew. He already knew.
You know, Trump was hot about that, right? So the Trump's efforts. What he talked about, he never revealed details of Trump's desperate efforts to get Ducey to overturn the Arizona election. In his apparent desire to keep the peace with Donald Trump, Ducey kept details of the pressure campaign a secret and withheld information that the American people deserve to know. The reason why this is important is when this thing went down in Georgia, when the Secretary of State in Georgia, Raffensperger, when Trump went to him and said, I just need, 11,000, whatever it was, 781 votes, one more than they got. I just need that so those electoral votes would go to me. You heard that conversation, but what if you had heard the same conversation, but not just with Raffensperger in Georgia, but you heard it with Doug Ducey in Arizona,
right,
and maybe 3 or 4 or 5 other places? It would have changed the whole tenor, of the people's perception of Donald Trump and how insidious he was. Donald Trump basically is a mafia mob boss.
Yeah.
And that's the behavior that he was engaging in. So an anonymous Republican donor learned about these efforts while sharing a meal with Doug Ducey, and two other sources confirmed the claims. But the ex-governor failed to alert the public or law enforcement, even as Trump set about destroying his political career. He kept his secret even as election deniers sought high-level offices in his state and cost taxpayers who picked up the tab for investigating bogus claims of fraud. Doug Ducey's reticence is hard to parse, according to this report. It didn't serve his own political ambitions. It didn't serve the state party statewide. The only person who benefited from Doug Ducey's reticence in telling the truth about what went on with Donald Trump is Donald Trump. And Donald Trump can't stand Doug Ducey. That just seems weird to me, right? So a little bit more on the investigation. I don't know if you all saw this stuff. They unredacted some parts of the materials that they had taken from Mar-a-Lago so that you could follow a little bit closer what was actually being disclosed and what was being hidden. New photo and video evidence of the raid on Mar-a-Lago revealed revealed more of the Mar-a-Lago search warrant when it was unsealed. It was they call it the raid that was heard around the world. Almost a year ago, the FBI raided Mar-a-Lago, home of Donald Trump, and kicked off a stream of invectives and threats against the FBI. This is just weird. The Republican supporters of Donald Trump, supposedly the law and order people, Trump was forced by subpoena and then by a search order authorized by a federal judge to go and get materials that were being essentially confiscated by Donald Trump that he refused to give back to the National Archives and Records Administration. That had to be done using subpoenas and a search warrant, and they still didn't get all of that material. But you have the supporters of Donald Trump vilifying the FBI, acting as if it's the FBI that's at fault when they're doing what they're supposed to. They should have gone and gotten this stuff the day after Trump left office, January 20th of 2021. If that stuff wasn't in the National Archives and Records Administration's hands already, the FBI should have gone and gotten that stuff the very next day. They were doing Trump all kind of favors to let him play games with them, for a year and a half. Federal magistrate Judge Bruce Reinhart unsealed portions of the Mar-a-Lago warrant. They revealed new photographic and video evidence of what went on at Mar-a-Lago. Among the revelations is a photo that shows 61 boxes of material in a Mar-a-Lago storeroom. The warrant says of the photo, the purpose of this photograph was to show the former president the volume of boxes that remained in the storage room. The storage photo, which appears, which they show in this report, captures approximately 61 of the boxes that Trump had stored in this storage room. The warrant also contained detailed descriptions of surveillance footage showing Trump co-defendant Walt Nauta moving boxes out of the storeroom. By reviewing the camera footage provided by the Trump Organization in response to the subpoena, the FBI has determined the following. On May 24th of 2022, Witness 5, who is this Walt Nauta, is observed exiting the anteroom doorway of the storage room with 3 boxes.
Wow.
Now remember, this they'd already subpoenaed this stuff. They'd already sent a search warrant to go get the stuff. So this is after the original stuff was given about 90 days after Trump left office. They gave him like 38 pages worth of stuff. Then they made a request. I believe it was in May of 2022. Trump didn't respond to the request. Then they submitted a subpoena or issued a subpoena. Trump responded with, a few more documents, but not much of what was still owed. And then they searched the property, and they got like 100 and something more. There was like 338 documents altogether that were classified documents. Excuse me, that they took from Mar-a-Lago. So this is what was going on. On May 30th, 4 days after the Anata interview with the FBI, the location of boxes, there was a significant subject of questioning about these boxes and why they were located where they were and what was happening to them. Witness 5, or Naata, is observed exiting the anteroom doorway with approximately 50 boxes, consistent with the description of the boxes that we had been referred to earlier. The FBI did not observe the quantity of boxes being returned to the storeroom. So there were 61 boxes originally in the storeroom.
Hey, Mr. Here, we got a caller.
Oh, let me get that call real quick. Hi, caller, are you there? Hello, caller, are you there?
Oh, yes.
Yep, we got about 4 or 5 minutes, so let's go. Yep, let me get your thought.
No, I'm sorry. Actually, I'm on a call for a 10 o'clock call with Talia.
Oh, with Talia. Okay. Well,
I'm sorry.
Stay on the phone, and Talia be with you in about 4 or 5 minutes. Okay.
Call back in 10 minutes. Thank you, dear.
Okay. All right. So essentially, there was the 61 boxes. They saw 3 boxes moved away. Then they saw 51 boxes, moved again and moved back. And then they saw more boxes, another 11 boxes moved out of the storeroom. So what was going on apparently was Trump was getting boxes from the storeroom, going through the boxes, whatever he wanted to keep, put them into other boxes, then put the remaining boxes back. And he was going back and forth and back and forth. And this valet, I guess he is, this assistant to Donald Trump, Walter Naata, he's facilitating this. The thing that's crazy is they know that there's video. There's a video camera recording what's going on in these hallways, right? He knows that that's occurring. So when they say, "What happened with these boxes?" or do you know anything about these boxes? They ask for an answer for something like that. You know something about it because they're looking at you handling the boxes. And he says, "No, I don't know anything about it at all. I have no idea what you're talking about." So they got him on 5 felony counts of obstruction of justice. This dude probably makes about $40,000 a year that Donald Trump is using, as his servant. He's facing 20 years because of his loyalty to Donald Trump.
Wow.
This is just bizarre. So that's that part of it. The move that they had made on Adam Schiff, to censure him, it actually turned out they did Adam Schiff a favor, because you know how every time somebody says something ugly about Trump, he puts it into a little commercial and he fundraises off of it, and he gets, a 500,000, $1 million or whatever from his fan base. Well, Adam Schiff took this censure vote that they did against him a week and a half or so ago. He took that vote and said, "This is what these people are doing. They're taking your money and using your money to abuse their powers of office to do things that good and well you don't want to see done. And so I need you to help me." They gave him $8 million.
Wow.
So if Trump thought he was hurting Schiff's candidacy for the Senate, he actually helped him by expanding his war chest by about 2-fold. Wow. Right? Just absolutely insane. Schiff reached out to his constituents and potential donors with messages like this. He says, "The question, my Republican colleagues, is not why am I the subject of the false resolution for doing my constitutional duty, but why are you not out here resisting these people, in the same way? Why are you not standing beside me, the subject of a similar rebuke for speaking the truth? Why did you not stand up to Donald Trump? Why did you not reject his immorality? Why did you not condemn his dishonesty? Why did you not speak out when his horde attacked our capital, or when he treats the nation's secrets with such carelessness, lawlessness, and disdain? Why did you hide from efforts to hold him accountable? Why are you silent? Why are you afraid? Why are you unwilling to do your ethical constitutional duty? Why did you cower? Why do you still? That was what Schiff said in writing to the public as a result of this censure vote. $8 million he got from the public in return for that. So that's enough for today. We're going to take our leave for this week's program. We'll see you all on Monday. Hope you have a great weekend. Looking forward to Talia Rodriguez in Lo Hablo de Negocios. Let's talk business. We'll talk to you in just a little bit. Take care. Bye-bye.